Okay, here's a little tour of my Acorn leacher before I fill it up. I got a food grade silicone hose connected to garden hose stuff, and then I fit it down to this McMaster car stainless steel food grade float valve. It turns off the water when the valve goes up, and you can adjust the height. I'm trying to keep the cloth underneath the water because the cloth kind of wicks up the water and seems like it could be a food, mold hazard. Though I don't think it was last time I leached in my 5-gallon bucket prototype. And then underneath here, I don't really want to take this off because I got this stainless steel ring that you lift up and then you put the cloth on it and then you just shove it down and it pinches it really, really tight to the side. We'll see how that works, but there's little 1/4-inch holes drilled all over the place in the bottom of this 55-gallon drum. And I have this 55-gallon drum cut into like a third, and then I've got the top of it catching the water and draining it into this sink basin, so it's going to automatically flow the water through. So I put about 4 1/4 gallons of flour. It's about 2 inches deep, which might be too thick, we'll see. And I'm going to start running it. When you're running this float valve, you don't want to be pushing it too hard, otherwise it kind of sprays everywhere. But that's a good level. And then I'll come back when it's got to be stirred for that initial settling of the flour. You got to stir it so that it settles really good, so that it leaches at a good rate. But yeah, the flour is getting to be pretty suspended. I've been mixing it up and cleaning it off. I'm hoping that the water level gets up to about here, so it'll be above cloth line, which should be mold reducing. We'll see soon. So it's been settled for a little bit. I've been just digging trees, and now I'm scooping up. So this is mostly testa, and that just tends to float. And if you do this a couple times when you're leaching after stirring, then you pretty much, you get some out. I don't know if it actually matters. I never fart around with the testa other than the skimming. And my flour is pretty freaking delicious. So got that. Stick that in this compost later. I just want to point out that this is working. For the most part, the cloth is underneath the water, and it's adjustable. And this is 4.5 gallons of water of flour, maybe 4 1/4. And it's got a small drizzle. It's hard to see in the dark. It's like maybe 10 drips a second is what's coming through, which is slow. It might be a little too slow, but it's still coming through and it's working. So there's that. So the thing about this Acorn leaching system is you gotta use a cloth to separate the flour from the water at some point. Like, decanting's not enough, and you waste a lot of flour if you get all the water off with decanting. So you're gonna need to strain it at some point with a cloth. And this auto-leaching system does that, and it leaches it for you. So it's not an additional piece of messiness. We're getting to the point, so even though it looks like it's dry, it's still dripping out enough water that I'm gonna let it sit a little bit longer before sticking it in the dehydrator. So I let this stuff drain overnight, and it's dry. Dry as just gonna get from draining. So now I'm gonna stick it in my dehydrator. Okay, I have a couple more points of discussion. So I learned a couple things from that last run. I haven't done another run yet, but the ultra fine flour, if there's flour, there's a certain particle size of acorn flour. It's probably around like 30 mesh, where it is so fine that it suspends in the water, and that has this property where it isn't willing to go through this. It's just not willing to go through the water is not willing to go through the ultra fine flour. It must have such wicking power that it never allows the water to go through, or at least at an insanely slow rate. So what I would recommend, if you're going to use a pour through leaching system and you don't have tight control of your flour particle size in your grinder, which I was just grinding my acorns just slightly too wet, and the burr was getting a little too hot, and because of that it was making ultrafine flour, which suspends in the water, which isn't that normal, depending on the mill you're using. But that ultrafine flour, what I would recommend is I would take a gallon or two of flour, put it in a 5-gallon bucket, saturate it, stir it, and then use the decanting method to get off that ultrafine flour. Anything that suspends in the water after, 3-4 hours, like, just pour that off, because we don't want that in this leaching system. It doesn't work in this leaching system to have ultrafine flour. You need like a flour that settles and has enough gap between particles that the water is able to rush through, which I think is about 16 to 20 mesh particle size. But yeah, I don't think the number of holes is actually necessary. I don't think that's exactly proportional to the amount of pass through of the water, but I just wanted to show the bottom of this and make that note on the flour. And then here's my my ring. This is 2 pieces of steel that I just kind of merged together, and it fits just perfectly snugly. It's hard to do with one hand, but I wanted to show that. And I'll just lay this cloth on the ring somewhere else, and then I'll move the whole system here and then push this ring down, and it's sealed. But you do want that cloth to be, touching the sides on the whole bottom. So, but this leaching system's, $150 to get all set up, and pretty cheap for how much work it's able to do so quickly. I think that's it.